You wake up at 3 in the morning again, your heart pounding for no reason you can name, and the first thing you do is reach for your phone because the silence is unbearable. The blue light blinds you for a second, but you scroll anyway, through faces of people pretending their lives make sense, through news that confirms the world is exactly as broken as you suspected, through anything, literally anything, that will fill this screaming void inside your chest. You have not been alone with your own thoughts in so long that you forgot what your actual voice sounds like beneath all the noise you have accumulated like armor. During the day you are busy, productive even, checking boxes and answering messages and maintaining the performance of someone who has it together. But right now, in this hour when the performance stops and there is no one watching, you feel it. That terrifying sensation that you are living someone else's life, speaking words you do not mean, chasing goals that were planted in you by people who do not even know your real name. Your hands are shaking slightly as you put the phone down, and the silence rushes back in like water filling a sinking ship, and you realize with a horror that makes your stomach turn that you have been running from this moment for months, maybe years, maybe your entire adult life. You are exhausted from pretending that the noise is enough, that staying busy equals staying sane, that if you just avoid the silence long enough, it will forget about you. But Rumi knew something about this 3 a.m. terror, this moment when all your defenses crumble and you are left naked in front of a truth you have been hiding from. And what he understood might be the only thing that can save you from drowning in your own avoidance. The silence you fear is not empty. This is the first thing you need to understand, even though every fiber of your being wants to reject it. You have been taught that silence is the absence of something, a void to be filled, a problem to be solved with more content, more connection, more anything that will make the emptiness go away. But what if silence is not empty at all? What if silence is so full, so overwhelmingly full of truth and presence and reality, that your mind, your poor, exhausted mind that has been working overtime to maintain your carefully constructed illusions, cannot bear to face it? Think about the last time you were truly silent, not the silence of sleeping or the silence of being too tired to speak, but the silence of sitting with yourself, with no distractions, no phone, no music, no escape route. How long did you last? 30 seconds, 2 minutes, before the thoughts came flooding in like an army reclaiming occupied territory, before the anxiety started climbing up your spine like poison ivy, before you invented some urgent task that absolutely needed to be done right this second. You are not afraid of silence itself. You are afraid of what you will hear when you finally stop making noise. You are afraid of the voice that has been trying to reach you through all the chaos, the voice that knows you have been living a lie, the voice that sees through every excuse and every justification and every carefully crafted story you tell yourself about why your life is the way it is. This voice does not shout. It does not compete with the noise. It simply waits in the silence, patient as stone, knowing that eventually, inevitably, you will run out of ways to avoid it. Rumi spent years among the dervishes, those mystics who understood that the path to truth requires a kind of death, not the death of the body, but the death of all the noise that masquerades as your identity. They whirled in circles for hours, spinning until the thinking mind exhausted itself and collapsed, leaving only silence, leaving only presence, leaving only the truth that had been there all along, waiting to be recognized. You do not need to become a dervish. You do not need to spin in circles or renounce the world or move to a monastery. But you do need to understand why you keep filling every moment with sound. When you wake up, the first thing you do is check your phone. When you drive, you turn on music or podcasts. When you eat, you watch something. When you exercise, you have headphones. When you work, you have notifications pinging every few minutes like a heart monitor, assuring you that you still exist, that you still matter, that you are still connected to something beyond this unbearable aloneness that lurks at the edges of every quiet moment. You have engineered your entire life to avoid silence, the way someone might engineer their life to avoid an abusive ex who knows all their secrets. And what does this tell you? What does this frantic avoidance reveal about what you are actually running from? The truth is not a thing you find through searching. This is what Rumi tried to tell his students, the seekers who came to him desperate for enlightenment, for awakening, for some technique or practice that would finally give them what they were looking for. They wanted him to tell them what to do, where to go, how many prayers to recite, or how many times to bow, or what sacred text to memorize. And he looked at them with those eyes that saw through everything, and said in 1,000 different ways that the truth is not something you acquire through effort. The truth is what remains when you stop trying. The truth is what has been here all along, watching you run in circles, waiting for you to get tired enough to stop. You have tried so many things to fix yourself, to improve yourself, to become someone worthy of peace or love or contentment. And maybe some of those things helped temporarily. Maybe you felt better for a week or a month or even a year. But here you are again, 3 a.m., chest tight, feeling like an imposter in your own life, sensing that beneath all your accomplishments and relationships and carefully curated social media presence, there is a howling emptiness that nothing seems to fill. What if the emptiness is not a problem? What if the emptiness is the solution? What if every single thing you have done to avoid the silence has only made the silence more necessary, more urgent, more inevitable? Think about the last time someone really listened to you. Not the listening where they are waiting for their turn to talk, not the listening where they are formulating advice or judgment, but the deep listening where they simply received your words into their silence, like rain into earth. How did that feel? How rare is that feeling? Now think about how you listen to yourself. When was the last time you sat in silence and actually listened to what is happening inside you without immediately trying to fix it, or explain it, or justify it, or make it go away? You treat yourself like a problem to be managed, rather than a mystery to be explored. You treat your inner life like a broken machine that needs constant maintenance, rather than a garden that needs silence and attention to grow. Every spiritual teacher, every mystic, every person who has ever touched something real beyond the surface of things will tell you the same thing in different words, but they all point to this silence, this stopping, this moment when you finally cease your endless doing and simply are. And you resist this with everything you have, because being without doing feels like dying, feels like disappearing, feels like admitting that everything you have built your identity around is ultimately just noise covering up the silence you cannot bear to face. Rumi wrote about the reed flute, that instrument made from a hollow reed cut from the riverbank, and he said the reed cries because it remembers the wholeness it came from before it was cut and hollowed out. The sound of the flute is beautiful precisely because it is the sound of longing, the sound of something that has been separated from its source, crying out to return home. You are the reed flute. You were whole once, before life hollowed you out with its demands and expectations and traumas, before you learned to perform and please and pretend, and now you make sounds all day long. But the sounds are just longing disguised as productivity, longing disguised as ambition, longing disguised as relationships or addictions, or any of the million ways you try to fill the hollow place inside. The silence you fear is the riverbank calling you home. The silence is not the enemy. The silence is the lover you have been searching for in all the wrong places, in all the wrong people, in all the wrong achievements and substances and distractions. And when you finally stop running and let the silence catch you, when you sit in it long enough for the panic to subside and the thoughts to slow and the desperate need to do something to dissolve, you will hear it. The voice that has been trying to reach you your entire life. The truth that does not need to be found because it never left. The presence that is so obvious you kept missing it because you were looking for something more complicated, more distant, more difficult to attain. But here is what nobody tells you about silence, about really meeting it instead of just enduring it for 30 seconds before checking your phone again. The silence will destroy you. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, but actually destroy the person you think you are, the collection of stories and memories and beliefs that you have been calling I and me and mine for all these years. This is why you avoid it. This is why you stay so busy. This is why 3 a.m. feels like drowning. Because on some level you know that if you really stop, if you really listen, if you really let the silence in, everything you have carefully constructed will be revealed as the house of cards it always was. Your career that does not fulfill you, but looks good on paper. Your relationships that are comfortable but not authentic. Your goals that came from fear or competition rather than genuine desire. Your beliefs about who you are and what you want. and what will make you happy that were installed by parents and culture and trauma before you were old enough to question them. The silence sees through all of it. The silence does not care about your resume or your bank account or how many people liked your last post. The silence only cares about truth, and truth is a ruthless companion that will not let you hide behind your carefully maintained masks for one more second. You know this already. You have always known this. That is why your heart races at 3 a.m. That is why you feel this low-grade anxiety humming through your days like electricity through power lines. That is why nothing satisfies you for long. Why every achievement feels hollow within hours of attaining it. Why you keep starting new projects and new relationships and new diets and new routines, hoping this one will be different. This one will finally make you feel like you are living instead of just occupying a life that belongs to someone else. You are living in delay. You are living in postponement. You are living in someday, telling yourself that when you get that promotion or lose that weight or meet that person or heal that trauma, then you will finally be ready to face the silence, to meet yourself, to live authentically instead of performing constantly. But someday never comes because the silence is not waiting for you to be ready. The silence is here now, has always been here, will always be here, and every moment you spend preparing to face it is just another strategy of avoidance dressed up as self-improvement. Rumi said that there is a voice that does not use words, and this is the voice that speaks in silence, and you have been drowning it out with words your entire life. Words to explain yourself, words to defend yourself, words to convince others and yourself that you know what you are doing, that you have figured it out, that you are on the right path. But the words are lies, not intentional lies, but lies nonetheless, because words can only point to truth. They can never be truth, and you have mistaken the pointing for the destination so many times that you have forgotten there is a destination beyond the words. When you sit in silence, really sit in it, the words start to fall away like leaves from a tree in autumn, and what remains is not the thoughts about your life, but life itself. Not the story of your experience, but experience itself. Not the concept of this moment, but this moment itself in all its raw, unfiltered reality. And this reality is so much, so overwhelmingly much, that your thinking mind cannot process it. And so it has spent years reducing it, filtering it, interpreting it, narrating it, turning the infinite into something manageable, something knowable, something controllable. But you cannot control silence, you cannot manage presence, you cannot reduce infinity to fit inside your concepts of how things should be. The mystics knew this, the dervishes knew this. Rumi knew this so deeply that his poetry drips with it like honey from a broken hive. They knew that the spiritual path, if it is real and not just another form of self-improvement masquerading as enlightenment, requires you to stop, completely stop. Stop trying to be good, stop trying to be spiritual. Stop trying to transcend your humanity or fix your broken parts or become someone worthy of love. Stop adding more practices, more beliefs, more knowledge, more techniques to your collection of things that might finally make you whole. You are already whole. You have always been whole. The wound is not that you broke into pieces. The wound is that you believed you broke into pieces and then spent your life trying to glue yourself back together with achievements and validation and the approval of people who are just as lost as you are. The silence knows you are whole. The silence has never believed the story of your brokenness. The silence is whole meeting whole, and the only thing standing between you and that recognition is your refusal to stop long enough to let the noise die down. Imagine for a moment that everything you think you know about yourself is wrong. Not slightly wrong, not wrong about the details, but fundamentally wrong about the most basic things. You think you are your thoughts, but thoughts come and go like weather, and you are the sky they move through. You think you are your emotions, but emotions rise and fall like waves, and you are the ocean they emerge from. You think you are your body, but bodies age and change and eventually die, and something in you knows it is watching the body, standing apart from it, not identified with it, even as you inhabit it. You think you are your history, your story, your accumulated experiences, but experiences happen to someone. And you are not just the someone things happen to, you are also the one aware of the someone, the one witnessing the story, the one that exists before and after and during every experience without being reduced to any of them. This is what the silence reveals when you stop running from it. This is what waits on the other side of your frantic avoidance. Not a better version of who you think you are. Not an improved, fixed, healed version of your current self, but the shattering recognition that the self you have been defending and improving and trying to fix never actually existed, except as a thought, a story, a collection of memories and projections held together by the glue of your belief in them. And this is terrifying. Let me be absolutely clear about this. What I'm describing is not peaceful or blissful, or any of the other words the spiritual marketplace uses to sell you on meditation retreats and yoga classes. What I'm describing is the death of the person you have spent your entire life becoming. What I'm describing is the collapse of every certainty you have ever had about who you are and what you want and where you are going. What I am describing is looking into the silence and having the silence look back into you and realizing that there is no difference, there is no separation, there never was, and your entire life has been spent building walls and defenses and identities to maintain an illusion of separation that was never real to begin with. This is why you check your phone at 3 a.m. This is why you cannot sit still. This is why every quiet moment sends anxiety crawling up your spine. Because somewhere deep down, beneath all your conscious thoughts and beliefs, you sense that the silence is not empty. It is everything. And if you let yourself fall into it, you will discover that the you who falls and the silence being fallen into are not two separate things but one movement of consciousness, recognizing itself after a long dream of separation. Rumi told a story about a man who spent years knocking on a door, begging to be let in, crying that he was lost and alone and desperate for shelter, and finally a voice from inside asked, "Who is there?" And the man said, "It is me. Let me in." And the voice said, "There is no room in here for you and me," and closed the window. The man wandered for more years in the desert of his separation, suffering and seeking, until he came back to the same door and knocked again. And again the voice asked, "Who is there?" And this time the man said, "It is you." And the door opened. You have been knocking on the door of truth, on the door of peace, on the door of home for so long, bringing your story, bringing your problems, bringing your need to be fixed and saved and validated, saying, "Let me in, I need help, I am broken," and the door stays closed because there is no room for the story of separation inside the truth of oneness. The door only opens when you stop bringing yourself, when you stop coming as a separate someone seeking something from somewhere else, when you recognize that the you seeking and the truth being sought are made of the same substance, arise from the same silence, dance the same dance of consciousness playing hide and seek with itself. But you are not there yet. You are still terrified. You are still avoiding. You are still scrolling at 3 a.m., trying to find something, anything, that will make this feeling go away without having to actually face it. And that is okay. Let me say that again, because you need to hear it. That is okay. The avoidance is part of the process. The fear is part of the path. The resistance is not a mistake or a failure or evidence that you are doing it wrong. The resistance is necessary because what you are avoiding is the death of everything you have identified with. And no one walks toward their own death without dragging their feet, without looking for escape routes, without hoping maybe there is an easier way. There is not an easier way. There is only this way, the way of stopping, the way of silence, the way of sitting in the discomfort until the discomfort reveals itself as just another sensation, arising in the awareness you are, not an emergency, not a crisis, not something that needs to be fixed right now, this second, or you will die. You will not die. Your idea of who you are will die, but you will not die because you are not your idea of who you are. You are what remains when all ideas fall away. You are the silence that exists before thought, during thought, and after thought. You are the presence that is here whether you are happy or sad, successful or failing, together or falling apart. And here is where Rumi becomes dangerous, where his poetry stops being pretty metaphors you can paste on Instagram and starts being a surgical knife cutting through every delusion you have built your life on. He did not write to make you feel better. He did not write to comfort your ego or validate your story or tell you that you are fine just the way you are. He wrote to wake you up. And waking up hurts, waking up destroys. Waking up requires you to see that you have been asleep your entire life, dreaming you were awake, and that recognition is not gentle or gradual or anything you can prepare for. It happens in silence, It happens when you finally stop running and let the truth catch you and pin you down and force you to see what has always been obvious, but what you have spent tremendous energy avoiding seeing. You are not separate. You have never been separate. The loneliness you feel is not because you are disconnected from others, but because you are disconnected from yourself, from the silence that is your true nature, from the presence that animates this body and mind, but is not reducible to this body and mind. And everyone around you is also disconnected, also running, also avoiding. And so you have built a whole society of people running in circles together, pretending this is normal, pretending this is just how life is, pretending that the anxiety and the emptiness and the low-level despair humming through everything is just part of being human, rather than part of being human while refusing to face what humans actually are beneath the stories. What are you beneath the stories? This is the question the silence asks when you finally let it get close enough to speak. Not who do you want to be, not who have you been told you should be, not who are you trying to become, but what are you right now, in this moment, before you reach for any answer, before you construct any identity, before you defend any position. Who is here when there is no story? Who is present when thought stops? Who is looking when you look for yourself and find nothing but the looking itself? This is not a philosophical question. This is not something to think about or discuss or add to your collection of interesting concepts. This is the only question that matters, and it cannot be answered with words. It can only be answered by stopping, by sitting, by letting the silence show you what you are too busy to see when you are caught in the noise. And what it shows you is not something new, not some spiritual experience you can add to your resume or brag about at parties, but the most obvious thing in the world, the thing that has been here your entire life, the thing that has never left and never will leave because it is what you are rather than what you have. The silence chooses you. This is what Rumi understood that most people miss. You think you are choosing silence, choosing meditation, choosing spirituality, choosing to wake up, but actually the silence has been choosing you all along, pulling you toward itself through every form of suffering, every disappointment, every moment when life breaks your heart and your plans and your carefully constructed sense of how things should be. The suffering is not punishment. The disappointment is not failure. The heartbreak is not evidence that you are doing something wrong. It is all the silence saying, come home, stop running. The thing you are looking for is not out there. It is not in the next achievement or relationship or experience. It is here. It has always been here, and you keep missing it because you are looking too far, trying too hard, believing it must be more complicated than simply stopping and being and recognizing what has been obvious all along. The silence chooses you through your 3 a.m. anxiety, through your sense that something is deeply wrong even when everything looks right, through your inability to be satisfied by anything the world offers no matter how much of it you accumulate. These are not problems. These are invitations. These are the silence knocking on your door saying, there is another way to live, there is another way to be, and it does not require you to become someone else, or go somewhere else, or wait until conditions are perfect. It only requires you to stop, right here, right now, and see what is already present when you are not busy running from it. But stopping is the hardest thing you will ever do, because stopping means feeling everything you have been using busyness to avoid. When you stop, you feel the grief you have been carrying since childhood. When you stop, you feel the anger you have been swallowing for years to keep the peace. When you stop, you feel the fear that whispers, you are not enough and never will be enough. When you stop, you feel the loneliness that no amount of social media connection or superficial conversation can touch. When you stop, you feel the weight of all the compromises you have made, all the times you said yes when you meant no, all the ways you have betrayed yourself to fit in, to be loved, to be accepted by people who never really saw you anyway. This is the content of silence, not emptiness but fullness, not peace but raw unfiltered reality. And your mind knows this, which is why it generates 10,000 thoughts per minute to keep you from sitting still long enough to feel what you actually feel. But the feeling is not the problem. The problem is the avoidance of feeling. The problem is the layers and layers of distraction and numbing and pretending that you have wrapped around your actual experience like bandages around a wound, and the bandages have been there so long that you forgot there is a wound underneath, and now the wound is infected and the infection is spreading, and no amount of new bandages will help, because what you need is to remove all the bandages and let the wound breathe and clean it out and let it heal properly, even though that process will hurt more than anything you have ever felt. This is what Rumi means when he talks about the wound being where the light enters. He does not mean that suffering is noble or that pain is inherently meaningful. He means that when life cracks you open, when your defenses crumble, when you cannot maintain the performance anymore because you are too tired or too broken or too desperate, that is when the silence can finally reach you. That is when truth can penetrate the layers of protection you have built. That is when you are finally vulnerable enough, finally open enough, finally defeated enough by your own strategies to stop trying and simply be with what is. And what is, when you stop trying to change it or fix it or escape it, is not as terrible as you feared. What is, when you meet it without resistance, without the constant mental commentary about how it should be different, is actually alive, actually real, actually here in a way that your thoughts about it never are. You have been living in your head for so long that you forgot what it is like to be in your body, to feel your feet on the ground, to sense the air moving in and out of your lungs, to be present to this moment instead of lost in thoughts about the last moment or the next moment or some other moment anywhere but here. The here and now that spiritual teachers talk about is not a location or a time. It is what remains when thought stops fabricating past and future. It is what remains when you are not telling yourself the story of your life. It is what remains when you are not judging this moment as good or bad, pleasant or unpleasant, wanted or unwanted. It is reality before interpretation, experience before explanation, life before the mind turns it into a problem that needs solving. And the silence is the space in which this reality becomes apparent, not as some distant goal to be achieved, but as what is already here, what has always been here, what will always be here, regardless of whether you notice it or not. Your noticing does not create it. Your noticing reveals it. And the revelation is not an event that happens once and changes everything forever. The revelation happens again and again, moment by moment, each time you stop, each time you breathe, each time you let the silence in even for a second before the mind rushes back in with its commentary and concerns. This is the practice. Not sitting perfectly for an hour without a single thought, but catching yourself in the noise, remembering the silence, choosing to stop even for one breath, even for one moment, even when every part of you wants to reach for the phone or the food or the next distraction. And gradually, so gradually, you will not even notice it happening. The silence starts to seep into your life like water into dry earth. You still have thoughts, but you are not drowning in them. You still have emotions, but you are not destroyed by them. You still have preferences and desires and things that matter to you, but you are not enslaved by them. You start to sense a space around everything, a presence beneath everything, a silence that holds everything, including the noise. And from this space, from this presence, from this silence, you begin to see that most of what you worried about does not actually matter. Most of what you thought you needed to fix does not actually need fixing. Most of what you believed about who you are and what you must become in order to be okay is just story, just thought, just noise, that seemed important when you were identified with it, but becomes transparent when you step back into the silence that sees through it. This is not detachment in the sense of not caring. This is not bypassing your emotions or pretending your problems do not exist. This is seeing everything more clearly because you are not seeing through the filter of your fear, your need, your desperate hope, that if you just figure it out, everything will be okay. Everything is already okay, not because your life is perfect, but because okay is not a condition that depends on your life being perfect. Okay is what you are beneath all the conditions, before all the judgments, prior to all the stories about whether this moment is acceptable or not. Rumi knew that the truth does not need your belief to be true. The sun does not need you to believe in it to shine. The ocean does not need you to understand it to be vast. The silence does not need you to recognize it to be present. It is here whether you acknowledge it or not, whether you practice meditation or not, whether you read spiritual books or not, whether you consider yourself awake or asleep. It is always here, always available, always waiting for you to stop running and come home. And coming home is not arriving at some destination or achieving some state. Coming home is recognizing that you never left. That the home you have been seeking is not a place but your own being, not something you find but what you are, not separate from you, but the very consciousness that animates this reading, this breathing, this moment of being alive and aware even if you are also anxious and confused and have no idea what you are doing with your life. The not knowing is okay. The confusion is okay. The anxiety is okay. Not because these things feel good, but because they are movements in the silence, waves in the ocean, weather in the sky, and none of them define what you are any more than a wave defines the ocean or weather defines the sky. You are the silence beneath all the noise, and the noise has been so loud for so long that you forgot. The silence is here. Forgot that peace is not something you achieve, but something you are. Forgot that the love you seek outside yourself is the very substance of your own being seeking to recognize itself through all these forms and faces and experiences. This is what Rumi saw when he met Shams, when he encountered another human who was nothing but silence disguised as a person, and the encounter destroyed him, destroyed his reputation as a scholar and teacher, destroyed his carefully maintained identity as someone who had figured it out, and he spent the rest of his life dancing and writing poetry, trying to express the inexpressible, trying to point to what he had seen, trying to tell you that the thing you are looking for is not in the next book or teaching or practice, but in the silence that is reading these words right now, in the awareness that knows you are confused, in the presence that is here before confusion and after confusion and during confusion without being touched by it. So when you wake up at 3 a.m. tomorrow, when your heart is pounding and your mind is racing and you reach for your phone, maybe pause for just a second. Maybe feel your breath. Maybe notice the silence that exists underneath the panic, that holds the panic, that is not threatened by the panic because it is bigger than any emotion, any thought, any story you are telling yourself about what is wrong and what needs to change. Maybe do not try to fix anything or figure anything out. Maybe just be there in the silence, in the darkness, in the raw, unfiltered reality of this moment, without any agenda except to be present to it. And if you can do that, if you can stay there even for 10 seconds before the mind pulls you back into its drama, you will taste something that all the scrolling and distracting and avoiding has been preventing you from tasting. You will taste silence. You will taste presence. You will taste the truth that has been choosing you your entire life, waiting patiently for you to stop running and turn around and see what has been here all along. You will taste what Rumi tasted, what every mystic and sage and person who has ever woken up from the dream of separation has tasted. Not something special or reserved for the enlightened few, but your own true nature, obvious and undeniable once you stop looking past it towards some imaginary spiritual goal. The goal is here, the truth is now, the silence is you, and it has been trying to tell you this in 1,000 different ways, through every moment of discomfort and dissatisfaction and divine discontent that keeps pointing you back to the only place you have never truly looked, which is right here, right now, in the silence that holds everything, including your refusal to see it. If this resonates with something deep inside you, if you felt even for a moment that these words are speaking to your actual experience and not just entertaining concepts, consider allowing this channel to be part of your journey home. Every week we explore Rumi's teachings, not as ancient poetry to be admired from a distance, but as living truth that speaks directly to the specific suffering you are experiencing right now in your modern life. Subscribe not because you need more content, but because sometimes we need to be reminded again and again that we are not crazy for feeling what we feel, that the dissatisfaction is not a problem, but a compass, that the silence we fear is actually the home we have been seeking everywhere else. This is not a community of people who have it figured out. This is a gathering of souls who have gotten tired enough of running to consider the possibility that maybe, just maybe, stopping is not giving up, but waking up.